kick off then. It's about almost 5 past. Yeah, welcome. So tonight I'm going to be talking about breath and focus in meditation, or you could also say that I'm also going to be talking about receptivity and activity. So tonight has been sort of billed as meditation essentials, and I think well, breath and focus and receptivity and activity in meditation are some of the essential things that we need to be aware of and to be able to work with when we're meditating. So whenever we're meditating, we need both breath and focus. So I'm going to be talking about that for a few minutes now, and then we're going to do some meditation. Then we'll open it up for questions, if you've got questions about what I've been saying or anything else. And then we'll finish again with a short little meditation, maybe just 5 minutes or so. Okay, so that's just an outline of the evening, and we'll finish at 8 o'clock. So yeah, so I'm just going to say a few things now. So the first thing I really want to emphasize with meditation is it's really important to be sensitive right from the beginning to your whole experience. So we can easily come onto the cushions with all kinds of ideas about getting focused, getting concentrated, having an amazing meditation, all of those things. And that's not surprising, of course. You know, we might well have all that happening, but it's really important to start with a really broad awareness of ourselves so that we're actually starting from where we are and not starting from maybe where we'd like to be. So it's about being receptive to where we are, how we are. And a good place to start is our physical experience. So it's really good to start with the body. And if you've meditated before, then you'll have noticed that we usually always start with the body. So we tend to scan through the body, bringing a bit of awareness to all the different parts of our body. And that's really crucial. It's like the preparation for the practice. But then as we're practicing, we need to keep coming back to the body, because we're actually meditating with the body, with the whole body. And we're going to feel the breath, hopefully, in the whole body, because we are a breathing body. Breath, when we come to do the mindfulness of breathing, it's not just an abstract idea or a thought. It's an actual lived experience. So it's really good to start with our body, our physical being, and to start to just pay attention to the body. And the body, you know, even how we sit will have an effect. So it's really important to have a nice broad base. It's almost like our posture will inform how we practice. So if we take time with our posture, then that will affect our actual meditation. So I really like the analogy of sitting like a mountain, because if you think about a mountain and going on a journey to a mountain, we often look at the peak, don't we, of the mountain. It's like we've got this idea we're going to get to the top of it, and we can have that same thing with meditation. But what does that peak or that sort of point that we're aiming for rest on? Well, it rests on this broad base, doesn't it? And that's where we sort of start off. We don't start off at the top of the mountain unless we can fly, which most of us can't. So we start at the bottom, at the base. We start with the sort of, the sort of more kind of on the ground bit of the mountain. Then we start to climb it and we get to know the mountain. And that's what we're doing in meditation. We're getting to know ourselves, and we're starting with our body. And our posture can also express that. So sitting like a mountain, so sitting with your legs crossed, or you could, I'm just going to show you this as well, just for a minute or two, you could also kneel. So you can sit astride your cushions like this, or you can sit on a chair. But however you sit comfortably, and maybe try and use this image of a mountain so that you feel stable and so that you feel grounded. And when you've got that broad base, then you can start to really tune into your body, be sensitive to your body. And then you can also start to notice actually how you feel. So in Buddhism, the word for feeling is Vedana, which basically means just pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Those are the three kinds of Vedana that we have. So when we look at how we're feeling, we're just starting to look at, well, what's the tone? What's the sort of Vedana? And I quite like that word Vedana. So it's just pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. That's it. It's just that. So, is our experience as we sit here, is it pleasant? Is it a bit unpleasant? Are we a bit uncomfortable? Or is it a bit sort of neutral? So you can just start to notice that. And there might be different things happening in different parts of the body. So there might be a bit of the body, like maybe if your knee's hurting, well, that might be a bit unpleasant. But then, there might also be some pleasant sensation around the heart area, just this sense of warmth, of just being here, giving yourself this bit of time to meditate, bit of space. So, you can notice all the different things. And the body will give you a lot of information as well about how you are. You'll feel things in the body, through the sensations in the body, through the breath in the body. Okay, so the body and the breath are really important in meditation. The other thing you can start to become aware of once you've got a sense of the body and the breath and the Vedana, is that then that can also reveal, well, what's the sort of flavour of your experience? What's the sort of colouring of it, or how does it? What's the flavour? Is it a sort of particular flavour, or is it a mix of different flavours? And it's the same again with thoughts. What are the thoughts like that we're experiencing? Are they fast, for example? Are they slow? Are we preoccupied with something? Or is our mind quite spacious and open, a bit calmer and quieter? All of these things are really good to sort of know before we start to meditate, because then we're actually meditating and taking ourselves into account. And it's from that broad base that then we're much more likely to be able to kind of gather all the awareness into a more sort of single focus, which would be our sort of activity. But the activity in meditation is often quite a gentle activity. So you can't force your mind to concentrate, but you can keep gently encouraging the mind to get interested in what's happening. And then the mind starts to focus, it starts to get interested, and then you suddenly find you're concentrating, and your experience is concentration in the sense of fullness. So a bit like concentrated apple juice is like concentrated and full of apples. If it's a good apple juice, your experience could be full of the breath if you give the attention at first to the breadth of experience. And this apple juice analogy, well, I still have a memory from when I was in India many, many years ago, and I was given this glass of apple juice, and it was the applest apple juice ever. It was the applest apple juice ever in the world that I'd ever tasted. It was absolutely full of appleness. So full of appleness. And my experience of that was so enjoyable and pleasurable. Of course, it didn't last because I drank the apple juice and I didn't then have another one because I was full up. And even if I had, it wouldn't have been the same. But there was something about this fullness of appleness, fullness of apples. And, when we really give ourselves this opportunity to really be broad and, expand to include all of what's happening, then we can also encourage ourselves to go a bit deeper in meditation. So during this period of time of the lockdown, I've been going for quite a lot of walks down to the River Thames. And the River Thames is a very beautiful river. It's a tidal river. So sometimes the tide's in, sometimes the tide's out. But when the tide's in and the river's quite full, it's also quite broad, and I really get a sense of its depth. So again, I think that's a really beautiful analogy. So the sense of a broad river, but also the sense of the depth of the river. So that's what we're trying to encourage in meditation, this sense of broadness or expansiveness in terms of including all of ourselves. And then this sense of depth and deepening awareness. And that's what happens when we unify our sort of activity and our receptivity, or our breath and our focus. But over the course of a meditation, we might have to sort of really, broaden out when we've been focused quite a bit, say. We might have to focus in if we've been very broad, because what can happen, of course, is that we can have too much of the focus, and then we can get a bit tight, and a bit sort of rigid in our practice and almost miss what's happening, what's really happening. We can also get a bit goal orientated or achievement orientated. And then, we can easily, if we haven't got to where we want to be, we can easily then think that we've had a bad meditation or that we're bad meditators, and then we don't want to meditate anymore. So I think it's really important not to sort of overdo the sort of focus. But at the same time, if we have too much of the breath and the sort of receptivity, I guess what we can find is that we go a bit sort of vague and drifty, and rather than being really present, we've sort of drifted off on some sort of floating down the river of fantasy, and that isn't that helpful too. So somehow we're trying to bring those two poles together, and in any one practice we're going to be doing that quite a few times, unless we're really lucky and we just find ourselves, well, not lucky, but maybe we've built up quite a bit of meditation, we just find ourselves dropping into this place straight away. But for most of us, we have to play between the two and see what's happening. Another way of looking at it would be, I was thinking about painting as well. Like if I saw my meditation as a painting, so each time I come to sit in meditation, I'm starting with this canvas, and I can try and get a sense of what's happening in that canvas, and then I can start to paint the broad brushstrokes of the sort of background of what's happening in my experience. And that's a really important part of the meditation. And then, it's only after I've done all that, I've really prepared the ground, the sort of backdrop to the meditation, that then I can start to paint in what I'm actually, focusing on. And that's what often happens in paintings, isn't it? You look at the focus of the painting, but if you fixate on that, you just miss all the interesting other things. And I was thinking about a painter like Matisse. Paints, he does paint like, figures, for example, but he also paints all the really beautiful detail of the fabric, say, of the chair that the person's sitting on, or the tablecloth on the table next to them. So the backdrop is also really interesting, and that breadth is really interesting. So I think that then helps us to have more of a process orientation in our practice, which, is important. So it's not all about where we get to in any particular meditation. In fact, I think really in my own experience of practicing for many years, it's a cumulative practice, and it just builds up slowly over time. And a lot of meditation isn't about having big experiences or dramatic focuses of concentration, about small turnings of the heart, small openings in the mind, small relaxations in the body when we're able to let go of a bit of contraction, a bit of holding. All of those things are important to, make note of and remember as we're practicing. So the other thing is, you could even start with a word when you sit down to meditate. You could start with the word welcome. So, just this word welcome. So you're welcoming yourself onto the mats, but you're also welcoming whatever your experience is. And because I'm learning French at the moment, I'm quite enjoying saying to myself as I sit down, bienvenue, welcome. So in a way, sometimes when you say it in a slightly different language, it goes in differently because you don't have quite the same associations. So I've been saying that to myself as I've been meditating, when I sit down, first of all, bienvenue. So Jana Dyer behind me or in front of me is learning Polish. Now, he might not have learnt welcome, so I'm not going to put him on the spot. But you could say that word to yourself, maybe in a language that's your first language, or if you want to, you could try it in a different language and just see what happens. Okay, so during the meditation, I'm gonna lead it so that we do come back to the breath again and again. And when you're at home, you could, like in the stages of meditation, you could try and remember at each stage of a practice to just come back to a bit more breath, so that you just include the breath again and again. And the other thing about breath is that it's really important to remember, and I think doing these live stream classes with people from all over the world, is that really the breath, the expansion, is the whole world. I'm meditating here in the London Buddhist Centre Shrine Room, but I'm also meditating in Bethnal Green, in London. I'm meditating in England. I'm meditating in the world. And that is like the biggest sort of expansion. And I think it's also really important to remember that we are meditating in the world. And we're part of that. We're not somehow sitting here getting away from the world. We're meditating in the world. That's important to remember as well. Okay, so we're going to do a bit of meditation. I'm going to guide us in, and then we can have some questions, comments, and then we'll do a little bit more meditation before the end. So just letting the body settle onto your cushions or your chair. Let your weight be supported by the planet underneath you, the earth underneath you. And that earth underneath you is both broad and deep. So let yourself be supported by that. And then we're going to scan through the body a little bit, working upwards from the base. And maybe if it's helpful, we can have this image of the mountain in mind. So we're starting at the base of the mountain, starting with our feet, toes. And just see if you can feel the feet. Can you feel the toes? You might even give them a little wiggle just to say hello to them, just to know that they're there. And if you've got bare feet, you might notice the texture of what's under your feet or your toes. And if you haven't got bare feet, just notice the socks, the fabric of the socks, and the texture of that. And notice the different parts of the feet. So the tops of the feet, the sole of the foot, the heel, and you might notice some parts of the foot feel more sensitive. Maybe the sole of the foot feels a bit more sensitive to you. And then letting your awareness travel upwards, ankles, shins, calves, all the lower legs, and then to the knees. Being aware of, again, the connection with the ground. And feeling that contact and any sensations connected with that contact. And then keep letting the awareness travel further up to the knees. Feeling the knees in connection with the ground. And the tops of the legs, the thighs, those big muscles. So feeling the support of your legs. And then have a sense of the weight dropping down through the sitting bones. As if they're sort of plugged in, rooting down, supporting you. And you can be aware of your hips as well. And the groin area. And pelvis. You might notice some sensations, some energy there. Pleasant, neutral. Or there might be some bits of unpleasant Vedana as well. Just noticing that. And then moving up the back, having a sense of the spine lifting, elongating, as if you're gently being pulled upwards by a golden thread. And at the same time, the tailbone is being gently pulled downwards. So you get a sense of the length of your spine, the spine supporting you. Maybe see if you can trace the length of your spine. See if you can do that from the inside. So can you feel or get a sense of the spine supporting you? And then see if you can feel into the landscape of your back, the lower back, middle of the back, upper back, shoulders. Might notice the rib cage, the movement of the rib cage. And then moving down into the arms, different parts of the arms. Again, you might notice any sensations. Maybe you can feel the air on your skin. And then down into the hands, connecting with each other, or some support if you've got a cushion or a scarf. So feeling into that sensitivity in the hands. See if you can feel the thumbs and the fingers, palms of the hands, the backs of the hands. And then let the awareness come more into the front of the body and the belly. And just tracking the movement of the belly. Feeling the sensations there, energy, softness, holding. Whatever's there, just noticing and trying to welcome it and be interested in what you find. Interested with a kindly awareness. And then moving up the torso to the chest and the area around the heart center. Noticing anything there, any sensations. And then the collarbones. And again, noticing the movement in the chest and the collarbones. And then up to the neck and the head. Feeling the weight of the head, supported by the muscles of the neck. And then the face. The forehead, the eyes, all the little muscles around the eyes. Just giving them some kindly attention, encouraging that sense of softening. And then the mouth and the jaw. And noticing the body is breathing. And come back to the whole body sitting here. And notice too if there is a flavour to your experience. Perhaps you noticed it as you were going through the body. And whatever it is, see if you can welcome it. You could even say welcome or bienvenue or any other welcoming word. And notice too your thoughts. Notice the flavour of them, the speed of them, and the quality. And be aware that you're meditating in the world with other people. And then from that broadness, that broad expansive sense of ourselves and this sense of connection with the world, we can start to just gather the awareness around the breath. Just starting to notice that we're breathing. And let the breath be as it is. You know how to breathe. So let yourself be breathed. And then let that move you into the first stage of the mindfulness of breathing, where you just mark each out-breath with a number. Keeping that light and subtle. It's just there as an aid or support to the practice. The main thing is the breath and this breadth of awareness. Let's see if you can let your interest rest on the breath. See if you can really listen to it. Gently encouraging this sense of interest. Being interested in what's happening and interested in the sensations of breath. So then we're going to move on, not to the second stage, but we're going to move on to the third stage of the practice. Letting go of the counting and having this broad sense of the breath in the body. Having a sense of both a focus on the breath, but also an awareness of your body. And if you do find you drift off a little bit, just come back to the sensations of the breath. Maybe resting the awareness in one place where you feel the breath. Or if you find you've got a little bit tight in your practice, see if you can broaden out a bit and have a sense of the breathing body, whole body breathing. And then letting go of the third stage and moving on so that we become aware of where the breath first enters the body. Just resting the awareness there on that detail of the breath. Listening to the subtlety there. And then just notice what's happening again. Take the awareness into the face. Just check you're not clenching or frowning, overly focusing. It might be more that you're just deepening, but just in case. So feeling those subtle sensations of breath. And then slowly just broadening out again. Coming back to more of a focus on the overall sense of the body. And then the sense of being wherever you are in the world. Maybe just taking a moment to just reflect on anything that happened or that you noticed, anything that was interesting. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So we did a longer meditation than I was supposed to. So I haven't left quite so much time for questions. But anyway, yeah, if you have got any questions or comments, please do, feel free to ask or drop them into the chat box, and I'll try and answer them. And it just felt important actually to, I guess, just have an opportunity to really come from that sense of breadth and to not sort of rush that bit. So yeah, but anyway, I'm interested to see how you got on as well. Yeah, feel free to let me know, and probably we won't meditate at the end again, as I said we were going to do. I'll just do some questions and then we'll round up.
No question?
Yeah.
So a question from Mercer. Mercer. How do we avoid building expectations about practice?
How do you avoid it? Yeah. Well, I guess it's, of course, we probably are going to have some expectations, but and maybe, it's good to have some sort of, it's not that you can't have a little goal or a little intention. I think it's important to have intentions and to sit with a sense of purpose. But maybe if you overlay it too much with expectations, then perhaps, a bit like a lot of things, you don't end up enjoying the process. So I guess what I would say is just make sure you're also focusing a bit on the process. And maybe by focusing on the process as well, then the expectation in a way gets a bit smaller in a positive sense. So yeah, just keep making sure you've got a process sense of what you're doing as well.
Got a message from Colleen is saying, thank you, that was very helpful. To spend time gathering in our whole experience. Oh,
good. Yeah, I like the analogy of gathering. You know, I'm more of a gatherer than a shooting the arrows. I'm a kind of gatherer. I think that's quite important. And again, maybe different people will have slightly different styles, but I think it's quite good to just learn different approaches and ways into meditation, in ways into, you know, this whole area of breath and focus. And maybe we'll always have one side that's perhaps maybe our more natural bent, if you like. So yeah, but good to know that even. Yeah, to recognize that and to know what maybe we need to sort of develop a little bit more or work with a little bit more. So like if we know we've got expectations, and of course we'll have some, everyone will, but you know, then we need to know to work with process, as I just said. But, yeah.
Mercer says thank you.
Okay. Good. Glad it's helpful. Any other comments, questions, any observations, anything people noticed about practicing tonight? Anyone find any welcoming words that they used? Yeah, Guillaume's going to ask me a question. That's good. Okay.
How do you deal with frustration? Like, for instance, like I see myself being frustrated whenever my mind wanders off.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the best response.
So Guillaume's saying every time his mind wanders off, he notices himself sometimes responding with frustration. Is that, he's just asking that question. Well, it's a good question, isn't it? I mean, it's very easy to get a bit frustrated with ourselves and what's happening. But I guess what I notice is if I've got a much broader experience of myself, then any little sort of, distractions in a way are quite small in the bigger scheme of the practice because I've got a broader awareness. So then I'm more interested in a broader field rather than a narrow band of experience. I guess if we don't have that sense of breadth, then we're more likely to have a narrower sense of practice, and then we might get frustrated because we're not fitting into that. I suppose that could be one way of looking at it. But you could also see every time you wander off and you notice, there's a moment of awareness. There's you back, practicing. It's only when we sort of get completely lost and wander off for ages. And even that sometimes, we go down different cul-de-sacs or whatever. That happens. And, I suppose we don't have to keep repeating that, but sometimes we have to experience that to sort of know how to come back again and what it's like not to do that, I suppose. Sometimes we have to do it, don't we, in order to then think, actually, I don't want to wander off for ages in my meditation. Otherwise, what's the point, but frustration is an interesting one. In fact, actually, this week in yoga, I'm going to be doing yoga on overcoming frustration. So I guess one thing I'd also say about that, whether it's meditation or yoga, and I'll be saying this more on Friday, is I think frustration comes from this sense of wanting to achieve as well, or having an end point in mind. And it goes back again to that process thing and achievement thing. So, yeah.
A few more questions.
Yeah, great.
So Mercer, a comment from Mercer saying she found it helpful to welcome the emotions, especially difficult emotions.
Yeah.
And then agreeing with Harvey, who finds himself feeling ill will towards noise from flatmates.
Yeah.
And I'll give you the last, I can give you the whole other one as well, which is from Francis around any tips on reducing anxiety around speaking publicly. How calm you are.
Practice. Yeah, well, I think speaking publicly, I mean, anxiety generally, I think meditating really helps. I think if we have a broad enough practice, then our breath in itself can be a kind of soothing thing, that helps us to stay calm in any situation, whether we're meditating or we're having to deal with something difficult outside of meditation, whether it's noisy neighbors or whatever it is, so I think partly meditation helps calm anxiety. Yoga can help calm anxiety. I'd really recommend those. Being more aware of our breath, I think that can also help us calm anxiety. And basically just coming more into the body, because anxiety tends to be quite high energy, doesn't it? So it sort of lifts us up a bit, whereas actually probably what we need to do is come down. And what you could do is focus on the breath in the belly, actually, really deeper in the body, rather than even around the nostrils. That might, if you're feeling anxious, maybe bringing the awareness to the nostrils and higher in the body isn't so helpful for that. Much better to bring it down into the belly. You could even imagine you've got little nostrils there, you're just breathing in through the belly. I sometimes do that. So and noise. It's interesting, isn't it, with noise? Can you say welcome to noise, Quite interesting. I think it depends a bit on the noise. But I think the main thing to remember with any sounds and noise, it's people. And they're not, often they're not doing it to annoy us. They're just getting on with their lives, and particularly, I guess, during this whole sort of lockdown period, lots of people, I know we're a bit freer now, but lots of people have been in a lot, haven't they? And certainly I've noticed more noises and things from my neighbours. But I see it as a real opportunity, actually, as well, to just take in that I'm sharing my home environment with lots of different people. I live in a block of flats, so I do hear quite a few people. And we're sharing this space in the world, aren't we, with lots of beings. So there's going to be sounds and noises, and some are more pleasant, some are more unpleasant. Again, it's noticing that Vedana and then what we do with that.
Francis says thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so probably we could go over a few minutes probably, so we could have time for another couple of questions if there are any. I'm sure we can go over by a few minutes. I'll ask my tech team. They're not rushing to get home. They only live upstairs. And if there aren't questions, that's fine. Sometimes we only think of things we'd like to ask later. And that's another thing to say. Do feel free, if you need to or want to ask any questions, to just drop us a line here at the LBC on, there's a staying connected email that you can also ask questions. And there are a few people that respond to that. So maybe Yanadaya might be able to find that and just put it in the chat box, or someone might be able to. It's a staying connected email that people can use. I don't know
I'll see if I can find
if you can find it. I mean, if not, it's probably on our website, I imagine. You could probably find it. But that's also a way of asking questions if you need to later. It's a good idea to do that.
Okay, got another question.
Okay.
A quote from Moses saying she found it useful when he said breathe, being breathed.
Yeah, being breathed. Yeah.
And then the question is from Oliver about restlessness during meditation. What good ways to deal with restlessness?
Yeah, restlessness. Well, one thing that's helpful is to try as best you can to sit still, because I think it's, if you don't do that, once you start restlessly, once you start, doing that little itch, it becomes this whole kind of thing, doesn't it? I mean, in a room like this, when one person maybe itches, it's a bit like a Mexican wave, going around. So if you can, sit still. Again, I think using the breath is really helpful. Again, the breath can calm restlessness, and a bit like anxiety, restlessness is a similar thing, but it's more a physical thing, whereas anxiety is probably more, well, it's more mental, isn't it? So again, you could come back to the body and breathe down into the belly a bit more, and that will bring the awareness down more into the body at a lower point. And that can really help to calm the body, calm the awareness, calm the mind as well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'd love to carry on for longer, but I'm going to draw a little line now because it's 8 o'clock. But I am going to say thank you so much for joining me tonight, and Janadaya and Guillaume for the tech. It's really good to see you all, and lovely to know there were people tuning in from as far and wide as Mexico and India. And I really did have a sense of us meditating together across the globe, and those threads of connection through doing a shared practice. I think it's really good to imaginatively really try and get a sense of that. It's even more important, I think, at the moment when we don't have as much freedom to travel or, go to other places. Really try and imagine people and their lives. So yeah, thanks for joining in from so far away, and also thanks to everyone who joined in from closer by as well. So as you probably know, if you have been tuning in, all of these classes are basically, we do them as an offering. So I'm here tonight just wanting to, well, in a way, just share some of my experience of meditating, and I very much see it as an offering that you can partake of, you can learn from, and hopefully it's something in what I've said might resonate with you and be useful or beneficial. So I really hope that's the case. And yeah, we want to keep on offering these classes and offering them to more and more people around the world. So, if you're in a position to actually give to us in any way, in terms of a single, or what really helps actually is a monthly donation. So if you are able to give a regular monthly donation, however small or big, big's great, small's great, then that would really help us. And it just means that we can continue to reach out to more and more people across the world during this time, and hopefully more and more people can learn to meditate, benefit from meditation, and that will have an effect on them and their communities and surroundings as well. So yeah, if you're able to, please do give. Thank you, and I really hope to see you soon, and have a good lunch if it's lunchtime, a good night's sleep if it's time to go to bed now, and have a good evening if it's evening time. Okay, bye-bye.